Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.
Both Congress and the White House are pushing for more action on gun control, but some states are pushing back. Arkansas is trying to ban federal gun control enforcement within its borders. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Arkansas is drawing a line in the sand when it comes to new gun restrictions. The Arkansas Senate passed a bill on Wednesday that would block the federal government from enforcing certain gun laws within Arkansas state borders. It bans state and local law enforcement officials and representatives from helping federal agencies enforce laws that conflict with the Arkansas Constitution. The bill is now moved to the state house. The bill says all acts, law, orders, rules, and regulations of the United States government, whether past, present, or future, that infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and Arkansas Constitution, Article 2, Section 5, are invalid in this state, shall not be recognized by this state, are specifically rejected by this state, and shall be considered null and void and of no effect in this state. Republican State Senator Trent Garner told Arkansas Online that it is more important now than ever that we protect our state rights. The bill considers the National Firearms Act of 1934 and the Gun Control Act of 1968 in conflict with Arkansas's Constitution. It also considers all taxes, registration, tracking, restriction, or confiscation of firearms, firearms accessories, and ammunition null and void. Penalties range from $500 to $1,000 for each offense. The bill passed the Senate 28-7, largely along party lines. The Arkansas House is overwhelmingly Republican. Apart from gun rights, the Arkansas bill also touches on other constitutional rights. It says any federal law or regulation that infringes on the right to free speech, press, worship, and peaceful assembly are also considered invalid in the state. Drafters of the bill call it the Arkansas Sovereignty Act of 2021. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Major League Baseball is leaving Atlanta. The 2021 All-Star Game, as well as the draft, won't be held in Atlanta anymore. NTD's Christina Kim tells us why.
The commissioner of the Major League Baseball announced Friday they would relocate this year's All-Star Game and MLB draft out of Atlanta, Georgia, in protest of the state's election reforms. He said the MLB supports voting rights and, quote, decided that the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport is by relocating this year's All-Star Game and MLB draft. Georgia recently made a number of election reforms to strengthen ballot integrity. Measures include requiring photo ID for absentee voting and adding security for drop boxes. But many critics call the law Jim Crow voter suppression. President Biden spoke out against the law as well, but in his criticism, he mischaracterized the bill. He said it would require polls to close at 5 p.m., but it actually makes it easier to keep polling sites open later. In an interview with ESPN, Biden said he would strongly support if the MLB moved their game out of Atlanta. But some pointed out that Biden didn't weigh in on the 2022 Beijing Olympics in the same way, especially because the Biden administration called China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims a genocide, and Biden himself vowed to be, quote, unrelenting against China's human rights abuses.
The president have voiced his support for MLB making a decision about the All-Star Game in Georgia. I'm wondering, when can we expect a final determination from the president about the United States participating in the Beijing Olympics, given that he said the Chinese president doesn't have a democratic bone in his body?
Well, I think the U.S. Olympic Committee would play a big role in
When the reporter noted Biden weighed in on the Atlanta situation, Psaki said Biden never told them to make the move. She didn't comment further. Christina Kim, NTD News.
13 states are suing the Biden administration over measures in the recent virus relief package. The rescue plan prohibits states from cutting taxes if they receive relief funds. The states are arguing this move is an unconstitutional power grab. And President Biden introduced his $2 trillion infrastructure plan. Now, how is the country going to pay for it? According to Biden, corporate taxes. But some experts warn of negative impacts on the American people. NTD's Christina Kim has the story.
President Biden calls his infrastructure package the largest American job investment since World War II. But experts warn of the economic harm that may come from the American Jobs Plan. Biden plans to fully pay for the $2 trillion price tag by tax increases on U.S. companies over 15 years. For example, the administration plans to increase corporate tax rates from 21% to 28%. According to the think tank Tax Foundation, this hike would raise the federal-state combined tax rate to over 32%, reducing American competitiveness. But White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the higher tax rate would still be lower than what it's been over the last 70 years.
The president's proposing a way to pay for his historic investments, making the corporate tax code more fair. He believes that the number of people, the number of companies that didn't pay taxes in the last couple of years is just insane, and most Americans would agree.
A study from the Congressional Budget Office shows that raising taxes would lead to less investment, less productivity, fewer jobs, and fewer wages. Another study from the Congressional Budget Office found that funding government investments through taxes could do more economic harm than good. Scott Hodge, the president of Tax Foundation, worries that the benefits of the infrastructure plan won't outweigh the cost of the tax increases. If this is the case, it's the American people who would suffer. He says instead, federal investments should be funded by cutting spending or using other programs. Christina Kim, NTD News.
And some good news for Wisconsin residents who don't like the statewide mask mandate. The state's Supreme Court has decided to strike it down. The Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday that Governor Tony Evers overstepped his legal authority by declaring multiple states of emergency during the pandemic. Justice Brian Hagedorn wrote in the opinion that the court concludes the governor did not act lawfully. The Democrat governor first declared a state of emergency in March 2020. He then issued more later in the year. Wisconsin law says that states of emergency cannot last more than 60 days without the legislature's approval. The governor, however, extended his orders without the legislature and also explicitly went against the state lawmakers in February. The CDC has updated its travel recommendations, giving the vaccinated another perk. They can now fly without testing or self-quarantining. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and the latest virus trends.
The CDC says people who've gotten the shot no longer have to get tested for COVID-19 before traveling. Neither do they have to quarantine after taking a flight. Here's the CDC director.
For example, fully vaccinated grandparents can fly to visit their healthy grandkids without getting a COVID-19 test or self-quarantining, provided they follow the other recommended prevention measures while traveling.
But there are limits. The agency says you should get tested anyway if you're coming into the U.S. from out of the country. The CDC gives these sorts of updates every once in a while, but recently they had to walk back one of the director's statements. Earlier this week, Dr. Walensky said data suggests vaccinated people are immune to COVID-19 and don't carry the virus. Here's the clip.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
But this isn't true. The CDC cleared this up in a statement to the New York Times. They said, Dr. Walensky spoke broadly during this interview. It's possible that some people who are fully vaccinated could get COVID-19. The evidence isn't clear whether they can spread the virus to others. Fact is, the CCP virus vaccines out today are not cures. But some studies suggest they can prevent disease or lessen the disease's impact on the body. Now let's go over the virus trends. Nationally, the 7-day case average is still going up. That's been going up for nearly 2 weeks. We ended April 1st on a 7-day moving average of 63,700, still far lower than January's high.
And don't let the name fool you. China's Confucius Institutes are under fire again. This time, a U.S. congressman is introducing legislation to provide more transparency about the organization. NTD's Steve Lance has the details on this story and more from D.C.
China's Confucius Institutes have made their way onto U.S. college campuses, where they say they promote cross-cultural exchange. However, the U.S. government says these organizations are directly linked to the Chinese Communist regime as part of their effort to carry out the regime's soft power strategy to influence Western countries. Republican Representative Paul Gosar introduced legislation to expose the Confucius Institutes and other foreign influence programs. Gosar's office says that this bill aims to protect American students and will provide them with the transparency they deserve when deciding where to learn. Although many Confucius Institutes have been closed or shut down around the world, some warn that they may be reorganizing and rebranding as part of a ploy to continue exerting soft power on college campuses. And 33 Democrats in Congress have signed on to a letter urging President Biden to shut down the Dakota Access Pipeline. The pipeline stretches about 1,200 miles from South Dakota to Illinois. Leading the charge are Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren and California Representative Raul Ruiz. In their letter to the president, they say that the pipeline has negatively impacted indigenous people living along the path. The joint letter also cited numerous environmental concerns. Senator Rick Scott is encouraging Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison to join an effort to relocate the 2022 Winter Olympics outside of China. This is in response to Beijing's dismal human rights record. Morrison has been known to take a stance against Beijing when addressing their human rights record. The Australian Prime Minister has also called for an investigation into the origins of the CCP virus, which was caused by the Chinese regime.